Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with the podcast, and Steve is already telling me how to do my job. He was concerned that I didn't know how to intro my own damn podcast, that
It
his
was
name is
support.
strapped to.
It was support.
Yeah,
Thanks. Never mind.
no.
Team player here.
Hey,
Never mind.
you are a team player, and you worked hard this week. This is called the Stuff Summer Says podcast
Steve.
with Steve. And the reason why Steve worked really hard this week is because he got us a great guest, a perfectly timed guest for both her upcoming season, but also this time of year. Well, this time of every 4 years, which is the Olympics. Penn State women's soccer head coach Erica Dambach joins us this week to chat her new facility that she's getting, some NIL stuff, some Olympic stuff, and a little bit about her, and probably one of my favorite quick question answers that we've gotten with a great story attached to it. So listen to that, and then, man, this is a big episode for us. And then we have the results. The accounting firm is in with the results to the second ever Stuff Summer Says media survey, and there's some surprising stuff on here. That's all I'll say. Okay? All right. Take a listen to our interview, and we'll be back after that. Steve, again, the booking agent, we're giving him a raise because
He does not get enough.
He does not get enough. We are joined by someone that I have enjoyed watching her teams play, and also as a proud Penn Stater and head coach of Penn State women's soccer, Erica Dambach. How are you, Erica?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Appreciate being on the show.
Yeah. Okay. I got a lot of questions for you. I got a lot of things I want to pick your brain on. I'm most interested in the biggest news, I guess, in your corner of the world, and that's you're getting a facilities upgrade, or it's at least officially announced. What input does a college soccer coach have on a facilities plan that impacts them?
That is big news and exciting news in our world, and everybody that has attended a game in Jeffrey as well. When I arrived at Penn State 18 years ago, this was something that was on the docket and something that was part of the interview process. I've been through the plans a couple of times now. Obviously, Penn State's gone through it in the last 15 years or so, and some different between COVID and everything that's gone on here. So here we are. And thanks to this administration, they've done the work, they've done the fundraising, $21 million to bring the Jeffrey Field renovations to reality. There will be coaches' offices and locker rooms and rehab, weight rooms, everything basically the student athletes need. The soccer players will be over at Jeffrey Field now. In addition, they will be putting a second indoor bubble that's not related to the Jeffrey Field facility, but fortunate in that it'll be side by side, and we'll have the opportunity to train in that facility as well. So a little bit of a one-stop shop, which is really in the daily life of a student athlete with the coming and going and the study hall and everything they need to do. It's critical for them to compete at the highest level.
You're down towards Rec Hall. Your office is presently in Rec Hall, correct?
Our offices, our training room, and our locker room are currently over at Rec Hall.
Okay. So logistically for you, obviously you're going to be in your home and have a new home. How much easier does that make your day to day as a coach when you don't have to travel all the way down to the other end of campus to go to practice or a game or whatever it may be?
You know, as a crow flies, it's about a mile across that campus. But the reality of trying to train a team, I look like a soccer mom half the time. I've got pennies and cones in the back of a minivan. We have 4 different facilities that we train out of. We train out of Rec Hall. We train out of Jeffrey Field. We train out of Multisport. We train out of Haluba, and we train out of East Hall. So I guess that's 5 facilities throughout the course of the year. So just the daily life of the coaching staff, we've all been together. That's one of the secret sauce of the Penn State women's soccer program, is I've been able to retain my staff. All of them have been there over 10 years. My associate head coach, Ann Cook's been with me all 18, and they are the reason we've been this successful. And so just even in the daily life of this coaching staff and being able to really devote all of our time and energy, versus right now we spend about 2 hours a day in the planning and trying to figure out where we're going to eat our meals and where we're going to train and what we're going to do. And I don't even know what I'll do without that free time. I got to be honest.
When it comes to being a coach, a part of that aspect you mentioned is fundraising. What did you have to do? Was there any involvement on your side in terms of fundraising towards getting those funds for this new facility?
Well, fundraising is an expectation of all of the coaches at Penn State. Obviously, we are competing against the best schools in the program in the country academically as well as in athletics. And obviously, it's a little bit of an arms race at times. And I think these 16, 17-year-olds, when they're trying to make a decision, hopefully they're making a decision based off of academics and the reputation of the university and world-class athletics. But certainly facilities comes into play. And especially when you're looking at our setup right now and they're comparing it to programs that have full soccer facilities, full women's soccer only facilities. If you look in the ACC, or sorry, if you look in the SEC doesn't even have men's soccer. So every women's soccer facility they have is specific to the women's program. Even in the Big Ten, Nebraska doesn't have men's soccer and Iowa doesn't and Illinois doesn't. These are all women's soccer specific. So when we're up against these different programs, it's challenging for us from a recruiting standpoint. So I've had a very active role in the fundraising. I've been on the road. I've been talking to donors. Again, I've been at this for about 18 years to try to make this project a reality. And there's been some people that have really stepped up to help make these dreams come true.
So there's a direct line in recruiting for these kind of facilities, right? Like kids see it helps influence their decision. You've been good before this happens. Like, is there a direct line in performance or expectation for you or anything along those lines? Like, okay, now we've got this, it's going to make it more efficient. I don't know, easier is not a word I want to use, but I mean, just, is there an expectation at all? Do you think on the other side, okay, we've given them better stuff, now they're going to be even better? Or is that just, it's just so competitive, it's just something you have to be competitive?
You know, there's times that I've had to sit back after this was announced and literally I've gone through that exercise of like, just imagine what we can do when we have this facility. There's no doubt in my mind that we've lost top recruits over this facility. We've heard so much from them and their families that they've decided to go elsewhere because they just don't see logistically that this is the setup and it's not. We try to compare ourselves to the pro leagues. We have some young players now, high schoolers that are going directly into professional leagues. We present as a professional organization and our setup needs to be professional in nature. And that's just not the case right now. That's not the reality. So, you know, I think it is, it allows us to present as professional as any one of these NWSL clubs and any of these clubs around the world and compete for the best student athletes around the world. So again, I pinch myself and I've worked to imagine what it's going to look like when we can bring the best of the best. Right now, we're bringing a lot of top players in, but there's still another level that we can achieve in our recruiting.
You've won championships. You've had all kinds of success, good days. When this thing was approved and you knew it was official, where does that day fit in the pecking order of your good days as the Penn State women's soccer coach?
The top 5 moment, I got to be honest. Like certainly that national championship stands atop the whole thing. But this has been something that these players since 1994 and even the club players before this that have been fighting for gender equity and for this program's beginnings in 94. This was a dream of everybody. Sue Sheets, who was the woman that hired me along with Tim Curley, they've talked about this and everybody knows that Penn State soccer deserves this. Our men's program's over 100 years old. But we finally have come into a time where, you know, they've made this a reality.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You talked about pro, and then, you know, one of the other things that people are looking into is facilities when they're committing to you. But then, of course, there's also this new wild card of NIL, right? That comes into play here. For someone that is, you know, not necessarily at the high level revenue generating sports like football or basketball, what have the NIL conversations been like for you with both the parties that would donate towards NIL and then also the athletes?
Well, I'll start with the athletes. Obviously, the Olympic sports are not where the revenue sports are. With that being said, we're inching closer. And with each passing class, with each passing recruiting class, there are more and more conversations. I think our current players are all dabbling in it. They're excited about it. They are taking advantage of the Brand Academy and Omar Easy and the work that he's doing. And I think Pat Kraft has really moved the needle in a lot of areas when it comes to NIL. But these conversations we're currently engaged with the 2026 class is many of these top players. It's one of the first questions I asked. In fact, I just finished meeting with Coach Rhodes with men's basketball and to talk through his strategy. And we're there. We're at the time where I think before it was maybe the fifth question they asked on the recruiting visit, and now it's up in 1 and 2. And if it's 1 or 2, that means it needs to happen before they arrive to make sure it's worthwhile for them to come.
So what is Penn State doing to kind of facilitate that and help that flourish?
Well, we've the work that Alyssa Francona has done in the Nittany Lion Club, there's been a lot of changes there, and we've been able to move the needle in some of our fundraising from that standpoint. Obviously, the creation of the Excellence Fund and opportunities for people to give directly to our sports programs has done a lot for all of us and our programs. But ultimately, there's just way more of an emphasis on it. When I go out on the road this year and we go to UCLA and USC, I'll go out and meet with donors. And that's just not necessarily been the case in the past. In fact, I met with my Nittany Lion Club representative today to figure out when I go to Nebraska and Iowa, who should I be meeting with and how can I take advantage of my time out there? And it's a new world. I think as head coaches, we're now general managers, and we need to think a little bit more along the lines of contracts and how we're going to pull this all together. And it looks very different than it did even a year ago. And we've got to evolve with it or we won't stay relevant. And I think that's Pat's done a good job of helping to educate us and to help us move forward in the new climate.
See, you're finding what you're going to do with those 2 hours every day.
I've buried those 2 hours. They're gone.
Let me ask there. What I don't necessarily, but what percentage of your day is tactical planning? What percentage of your day is NIL planning, recruiting planning? Like, kind of maybe not. You don't need to take me through it every single day because I'm sure they're all different. But what percentages would you ballpark maybe on a week of your focus?
It certainly depends on the time of year, obviously. The off season looks very different than in season, but I think people will be shocked at how little we're able to allocate to actual soccer planning. In fact, your coaching staff is shocked. We're shocked at how little we just had. Declan Dougherty, our new assistant coach, came from the club game, and he's only been here a few weeks, and he is just beside himself figuring how much paperwork and how much fundraising and how much booster club and how little soccer, how much time we actually have to allocate to the soccer planning. And certainly we find that time, but it's not nearly as much as it should be. And it could be, and that's but the reality is you've got to raise the money to bring in the players to have the talent to win the games. And you can have all the great planning, soccer planning in the world, but if you don't have the players to execute the game plan, it doesn't matter. So when it comes to NIL and fundraising, we got to get the players here first before we can worry about the game plan, to be honest.
When it comes time then for the season, obviously you're doing some recruiting a little bit, but does a lot of it shift then back into X's and O's?
It does. And we start preseason Monday. So July 29th, we start preseason. On August 1st, though, is the first day we can bring recruits on campus of the 2026 class. So the 29th and 30th are going to be brilliant. I'm going to be able to focus solely on my team, while at the same time, members of the staff will be working on making sure those visits are buttoned up. And starting August 1st, we will have 2 recruits on campus every day through the month of August, trying to bring them into our program while trying to run 2 sessions a day. We will have 2 sessions a day during that time, and then we'll have about 2 hours as a staff to be able to talk through it and rehash, go through players and prepare for the next one. But obviously, we're going to have all of our ducks in a row before that starts in order for it to run the way we need it to run.
With your staff who's been there so long, I mean, Declan's new, but everybody's been there so long, and it seems from the outside, right? There's this collegiality, this family atmosphere, this, your kids, what do you value and what's important in trying to assess those kids in terms of fit for you, right? If NIL is a first or second question, how do you find out what else is important to them so they're going to fit when they get here, or if you want them to be here?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question because the timeline to figure that out has shrunk. I think it's one thing, I think if that's the first thing they're worried about, certainly that's something that raises a little bit of a flag. But, there's a lot of very savvy business people out there as well. They realize that their daughters are top talents. They're getting these types of offers from other schools. And so ultimately, I think it's just doing your homework and talking to coaches and guidance counselors and anyone and everyone that knows these young women, so we can get a little bit more of a background check and get an understanding of culturally how they're fit. And then we're on the road all the time and we're watching the way they interact with their coaches and their teammates. So I think it comes down to our coach's eye and what we see and what we witness. And I think we see these players enough to have an understanding of culturally how they'll fit in with us.
Thanks.
What does the prototypical Penn State women's soccer player, how do they act off the field? What are they like behind the scenes? Like, what is your build your dream athlete, if you will, but off the field aspects?
We just had our academic advisor, Jim Weaver, who was with us for 30 years with the program. He's tremendous. And he was hilarious with our students because he would always call them little freaks. They're just little freaks. They're unbelievable in the classroom. They're always out in the community. They're killing it on the field. And he'd joke about that all the time, but that's reality. I mean, these, don't get me wrong, I'm not naive. These kids have a lot of fun, right? They're in college and you want them to enjoy it. But at the same time, when they come to us and they talk about being a pro, they do keep the main thing the main thing. I don't deal with a whole lot of discipline issues. I'm not dealing with calls over the weekends of things that these student athletes are doing that they shouldn't be doing. Their GPA, the average on the team is a 3.6. These students are impressive. So, I think for me, it is all of those things, but also being their unique self. We really need to make sure we are providing an environment that's inclusive and diverse and bringing in students from all over the world. We've got a wonderful woman, our captain's from Germany. We just graduated Eva Alonso from Spain. She's now playing in a Spanish club. We got an Irish international. That's fun for us as well. So really welcoming a lot of different backgrounds to give these student athletes a really cool experience.
I'm trying to think of the way I want to phrase it, but when it comes to the pro game, it used to not really be a thing outside of the international tournaments, at least in America. How has that conversation changed? Like, have you noticed athletes over the last 10 years become much more plugged in of, I want to go pro and I want to do this professionally as a living?
Yes. I mean, there's more opportunity, right? Our league is now viable. These young women do no longer need to have a second job, which is huge, right? This used to be a side gig. Now minimum wage in the league is $50,000. That's the entering salaries of the rookies. There are, like I said, young players signing. So below 18, they can have 5 of them on their roster. Day after day, we're seeing these young players forego college. We just yesterday, I saw a player that had committed to Virginia and Florida State and Stanford all decide to go into the pro league directly. So times are changing. These teams are offering them, in our world, they're offering them, bigger numbers. They're offering them six figures, and these families are taking advantage of that opportunity. What that means for school, I don't know. I don't know, specific to each of those, but these players, when they come to us, they talk about being pros, and Penn State has the second most number of players in our pro league right now. And that's how we're able to attract. Without the facility, without some of the other things, that's how we're able to attract these top student athletes, is we've helped them develop to be pros.
So
you got the whole, go ahead, Darian.
I was just going to ask, so you've obviously coached in the Olympics, but now you have 2 Olympians this year, correct? Yeah. What is that like for you when you see any of your former players go on to be at either the Olympics or World Cup, the highest level of the sport?
Yeah, we have 2 players on the U.S. team. I'll tell you, those 2 players, Sam Coffey and Alyssa Nair, their stories, their journeys, incredible. And I think it's one thing to see them and to have that pride, but it's even deeper because you know what they went through to get there. You know what they sacrificed. I mean, that everybody uses that term loosely in terms of that's been their dream. And so is it really a sacrifice? But this most recent one, Sam Coffey, she came to us after 2 years at Boston College, a really tough decision to transfer out, had a great 3 years here, took us through the COVID season as our captain, went through all sorts of struggles during that time, didn't make the World Cup team, and now she's a starter in the Olympic team. And, that just obviously is the tip of the iceberg. But there's so much pride. My daughters and I have got a 6 and an 8-year-old daughter, and we sit and we watch their heroes on TV, and they're shouting for Sam Coffey, and they're wearing their jerseys, and it's everything. It's everything in my house, and it's everything for our program.
So when will you have time to watch in the next couple of weeks? Like,
they
you
will be on
the
DVR.
schedule, like. Okay.
No, that's one thing we really try in preseason. We really try to stay true to is try to give our players opportunity to watch it. So we'll make changes to our schedule to try to watch these games.
That's awesome. What, for a coach, what are the Olympics like? You've gone to 2, correct?
Correct.
What is that experience like? Is it as intense as it's described?
It is. So I was in 2008 in Beijing, and then 2021 in Tokyo. 2 very different experiences, as you can imagine. They're intense, but they're a blink. I mean, it's just such a quick moment in time. You go through that experience. Everything is about that gold medal, right? Especially with the U.S. women's soccer team, everything's about the gold medal. And if you find that you're only chasing that, you hear so many cliches about the journey, enjoy the journey, enjoy the journey. I'll tell you that Olympic experience is like that. And it's as memorable as it is. There are also so many details in it that you want to never forget. But there's so much to it. You're taking in so much, right? I remember some of the runners that we were trying to watch in 2008. You're not actually experiencing any of the other Olympic events because you're so immersed in what you're doing. And it's not until you kind of jump on social media and you see the excitement. I remember in 2008, looking at the social media back from State College and people hanging out at Pickles, watching the U.S. women play. And I'm going, wow, this is awesome. Like, people are following this, but you are in a bubble. You are in your own world. And you have one singular focus within those moments, and it's intense.
Erica, Darian may have one more, but I have a question that's going to be the toughest question of the night, probably. So I'm going to need you to like shake off your humility a second. We've talked about the facility. We've talked about the team of people that bring them here. We talked about the support of the university, donors, whatever else. Program's pretty good because of the coach. So I'm curious, could you give me a scouting report on you as a coach? Like, what are you good at? Because realistically, you've been here 18 years. They're good. You got a national championship. You've coached in the Olympics. If there's an opening at the Olympic level in the future, your name's probably in the mix. What are you good at? And why are you good at what you do?
Good question. What am I good at? I love these players. I have had opportunities to go in our pro league. I've had opportunities to go with our national team full time. I have found my sweet spot in that 18 to 22-year-old age range of watching them and helping them through the hardship, giving them a little kick in the butt, putting an arm around them. I think the balance between really pushing them, pulling them, and supporting them, whether that's the coach or the mom in me, I had great parenting and great mentors myself to be able to work through, but I have had those opportunities and I haven't looked at them for a second because I know there's something really special about this age group. So I don't know if I'd be a great pro coach. I don't know if I'd be a great coach for the national team, but I do well in college because watching the journey of these 18 to 22-year-olds is something. Each one of their journeys is so different, and they never cease to amaze me. And that's the one thing that these 18 years have taught me at Penn State is never sell them short, never project where it's going or how it's going to end up, because as soon as I start to do that, I make a mistake and I sell them short. So I haven't seen it all, but I've seen a lot. And I've seen players that I thought there's no way that they're going to be able to be successful. And I've seen them end up as all Big Ten players or all Americans, and vice versa. So give them an opportunity to thrive and support them to thrive. And we've had a lot of success with it.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
All right. We can't let you off the podcast without asking our one quintessential podcast question. What is your go-to creamery ice cream flavor?
I got to tell you a great creamery story first.
Okay.
I love a good story. So when Ann and I got here in 2007, we wanted to bring a bunch of our own recruits in, right? Paula had done an unbelievable job with this program, different culture. We wanted to shift it and go into what we were trying to do. So we were trying to bring in a pretty big class. And so we were entertaining families left and right. Every day we were going to the creamery with these families, right? And all of a sudden I'm like, my shorts don't fit. Like I can't keep doing this. I can't keep eating this creamery at this rate. And so Anna and I talk about it one day. We're like, listen, I've got a plan. We're going to start ordering the milkshake because you can't really tell. You can't have a recruit order an ice cream and then not order an ice cream, right? That's just rude. And there's no way we're going to get this family. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to order this milkshake. And so I start ordering the milkshake, but I'm a talker and I get talking and I'm sipping on this milkshake. And all of a sudden I'm like, there goes the milkshake. So that is my story. Chocolate chip cookie dough is my go-to, and I tried to spend as little time there as possible, but I still always end up there at the end of every tour. And that's our closing place there in the Arboretum is where we close these recruits. And yep, that's the closer.
That's amazing. That is legitimately one of my favorite creamery stories I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So, all right. Usually when we have journalists on, we ask them what they want to plug. Why don't you give your team a shout out? Maybe inform listeners when your first game is so they know to come check you out.
Yeah. Well, first off, watch Sam Coffey and Alyssa Nair in the Olympics. It's going to be awesome. They are both starting for the U.S. women's national team right now. I don't know how that compares to any other school, but 2 Penn Staters out of 11 in the starting team is incredible. August 15th, we open up against Texas Tech. We have the number 1 ranked strength of schedule in the country, meaning the hardest schedule in the country. I don't know what that distinction means, but I'm not sure I want to have it, but we're stuck with it. And so we're gonna attack it. But yeah, August 15th, Texas Tech, nationally ranked program. And then we're bringing the big dogs in, right? We're bringing the Virginias and the Michigans and Georgetowns and those kind of things. So come out. This is going to be a really good team. We've got a really good returning group of players and great leadership in this group as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, spending some time with us. This was great.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Steve, I think the main thing that I take away anytime I hear or talk to or just had that great conversation with Erica is, again, the passion that she has for not just Penn State, not just her job, but her players. And I think that was what kind of came through and spoke to me. And I think that's one of the reasons why she's one of the best coaches in the country and so good at her job.
Yeah, I think if you think through her day of what she talks about, the things she does, you asked about her time and how she balances all the stuff she has to focus on. She's adaptable. I like her because she's a storyteller, from the creamery thing. And I don't know if I told this story before on the podcast. She was on the caravan the year I was in the caravan with them, the coaches, when O'Brien did his first set of caravans. And Erica was one of the warm-up coaches, like early leading up, and heard her spiel like 3 or 4 times. And she walks to me where I'm sitting in the bus and says, "Hey, how do you think my thing's going? Like, how would you improve it? Like, what do you think?" And I wasn't sure she was talking to me. Like, I'm looking around, I'm like, this is, not that I don't know how to communicate, but I'm like, why is she asking me? And she was telling this great story about coming into Happy Valley and you're in the backseat of a car and you see your parents who are both alums, their hands touch in front of you as they're holding hands and you're driving on the campus. And I'm like bawling thinking about it. I'm like, what a great picture that is, right? Like, what a great storyteller she is. So yeah, her passion. And I thought her answer I asked about her as a coach and she talked about her kids. So she didn't answer the question, but she did answer the question, right? About what her passion was. So yeah, I'm glad she made time. And I think all the things she talked about is why she's good.
She's so authentic, I think, is the main thing that I get from her. That's the word that comes to mind, because I feel like sometimes you don't get that with coaches and they want to coach speak you out the wazoo. Not with her. I've said it before. I've said it and I'll say it again, particularly with her being on this. No program on campus deserved a facilities upgrade more than hers, and really more than the soccer programs. Jeffrey Field was a joke, and it's a beautiful turf and a beautiful playing surface, but for the quality of play that is played there by the 2 teams that play there, it was sad. And so it is wonderful to see these renderings and kind of see all of these come to fruition finally, because I mean, she said it there. It was in her initial job interview that they had
I
been
know,
talking about this.
18 years ago.
Like, and it's funny because like this is, if you kind of were paying attention, like you knew this was eventually coming. It's just like, why is this? Why did it take so long? So it's great to see. It really is.
I'm excited for them.
So yeah. All right. Anything else on the Erica interview?
No, I'm on the edge of my seat now for the survey results.
Can I take a quick detour? It's not a bad detour.
Your show.
That's fair. That's true. You're not telling me what to do today. I just think we should briefly discuss these new renderings that came out about Beaver Stadium today. None of them are really earth shattering. Besides, there's going to be a place that people can hang out before the game, to watch, or to eat food, which I think is cool. That's nice that they added something like that. Looks like there's going to be more grab and go coming in, which I'm a big proponent of. It's every stadium that I've gone to recently that has it. It is so much easier. I was at the airport the other day and they had it. And I was like, this is great. Big fan of that. And then the other thing I wanted to do, is just we finally have a rendering of this super video ribbon. Which you don't have your season tickets up there anymore, but that would probably be annoying if you had your season tickets in the last row of the south.
It'd be above my head. It'd be right there. It'd be right there.
Yeah, but I feel like it'd be hot. Well, actually, in winter that would be a good thing.
It'd be nice. Be nice.
Yeah.
Cut the wind down, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, the only question I had in the rendering, and it's been a while. Gate F.
Okay.
That's Pollock Road, right?
Yes, that's the. Wait, is Gate F? Gate F is not the corner one. Gate F is the old statue gate, right?
That's what I was getting at, right? Gate F is, there's not much change, but I feel like the whole mounds of grass and where the statue were, now again, here we are, I'm the old guy, right? So I can raise that topic, are going to go away with this, right?
Are you upset about mounds?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
No, not at all. But as I'm trying to figure out the geography of it. There's the word, geography of it. Right, that's what that is, right? So that little where people would come, but again, people are aging out and doing it over. So no, 3 additional escalators is the other big thing, right?
Which were there escalators in Beaver Stadium?
There was one.
Oh, that's right. We've gone over this before.
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting a little bit of taste of the future. I don't have any issues with it, as long as I did wonder, this is a very niche logistical question, something that I only would worry about. So they are expanding Gate A out.
Where are they going to sleep?
Well, so not so much that, because I think there's an area to sleep. It's more so where are they going to go to the bathroom? Because the only bathroom that you could use at Gate A, like when you were up there, I would assume they're still going to have access to that.
I would think they would. That would be horrible. That'd be big news if they prevented that access for Nittanyville.
Yeah. So that's all.
We'd protest. We'd go do live show.
We could. All right. I just wanted to hit on that real quick. All right. Are you ready? The results have been tabulated, formulated. First off, I want to say thank you, because we put this out again this year, and we did basically just the same number of people that responded, which is great. Like we are not decreasing in our size. I'm very excited about that. Very thankful for that. I don't know the official number between this year versus last year, but we got a lot of responses. So I want to say thank you to everybody that filled this out, took time to fill this out. We appreciate it, because this is why we do this podcast, why we have fun with this podcast. All right. I'm going to jump around on the questions. But I think we should start here. It's just favorite network. We asked people this year what their favorite network to watch a Penn State football game on was. There were 4 options: NBC, CBS, Fox, and BTN. Do you want to take guesses on this?
Could be NBC.
NBC was number 1 at 42%.
Yep.
Number 2?
BTN?
Nope. CBS was number 2.
Okay. Oh, that makes
Which
sense.
is interesting.
Wow. So did Fox finish behind BTN?
No.
Okay.
No. BTN was last, and Fox was third. CBS is interesting to me because there's really only been 2, 3 Penn State games on CBS since this whole and one of them was an away game. So it's interesting to see the affinity for it already start, and
or the dislike for I think the
this
whole
is more dislike
for Fox and Noon. But I'm sorry, that's where your money comes from. I get it, I understand, and But they are less enjoyable to watch. I mean, that's the question. Like, I'm sorry, Gus and Joel just aren't. You don't trust them. They feel hype masters. Whatever.
I think the product, while maybe more vanilla-y on CBS, is fine. Like I think that's why maybe I trust it better. I don't know if CBS has done things to wow me in the same way they did that with the SEC yet with the Big Ten. I think we're still gonna have to develop that relationship as a fan. But yeah, so none of this was terribly surprising. I think I was maybe 20% voted for Fox, which feels 1 out of every 5, which feels slightly high, but I don't know.
Yeah, for as many games as are there, it feels slightly low, right? Like people know what they're getting there, and they don't like it as much as the other places that they get less of it at.
For as much bitching and moaning that goes on about Fox, I thought it was going to be even lower, and I thought maybe BTN was going to be a little bit higher. I don't know. I think BTN, like most of their broadcasts, are actually pretty decent, even if they're like a subset of Fox broadcasts. But
they're clean. They're just they're not super special because those aren't the games they're getting. Aren't super special.
Right. Oh, I forgot to put this in here. We had there were people from Colorado, Nebraska, Massachusetts, Maine, Texas, everywhere that kind of answered. So thank you for that. Of the people that answered our survey, 71% of those people say they have at least one paid site subscription to either The Athletic, On3, Lions 247. I think, and a couple people threw in Penn Live as a write-in option, which I thought was interesting. I guess I probably should include them because they are pretty much behind a paywall. I wonder if that is a result of us as a society being forced into more subscription-based models, or people find value. Like at least on 3 at The Athletic and Lions 247, I find value in paying money for all of those because I get access or articles or things that I don't get anywhere else. But that being said, those places do provide me much better access than I would think pretty much all of the other outlets. That's no knock. I just think if you're a diehard fan, that's the comprehensive coverage you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, because the free stuff, I mean, I think why 71% of people are paying for something is the free stuff isn't as comprehensive, right? You're just not, you're getting news conferences, you're getting games, you're getting some opinion stuff. Those other pay ones you're getting aside from The Athletic. Audrey doesn't do as much recruiting stuff, but those, you got the recruiting stuff there. Like she'll go find a unique thing on an off week about a recruit, but she's not necessarily doing the recruiting stuff.
You're getting a forum too. You get the community sense of community.
Exactly. Well. Yeah. No, there's good reasons for people to do it.
Do you pay for any?
I pay for The Athletic.
Okay.
I resubscribed to Penn Live. We had that discussion.
Yes.
A couple weeks ago about whether or not I'll keep it through football season or not. I forget what it goes to after my summer trial period's over. No, The Athletic's the big thing. I mean, because Wogo's free for me, right? So I can get him in some context there. And I pay for the CDT. I mean, anymore I have to pay for the CDT. Yeah. So, yeah.
Do you get the CDT delivered to the doorstep?
Comes twice a week. That's all they do anymore. Comes Wednesdays.
Really? I didn't realize they really did.
Comes Wednesdays and Saturdays for Sunday.
Okay.
So it is primarily a digital thing now.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Moving on to the podcast. This is when we start to get to the top countdowns, if you will. 79% of people that answered said they listened to a Penn State podcast, which in the context of us putting this out there isn't that surprising because we are a Penn State podcast, so some of our audience is tapped into that. But not everybody said us, which is good. But we'll get to that here in a second. I think I find a lot of value. I'm finding more and more value out of podcasts. And maybe it's just because I have more free time to listen to a podcast. I very much I prefer the pace of a podcast, and I prefer the ability to kind of pause it when I need to, listen to it when I want to. It's just a little bit easier for me. So, all right, are you ready for the top 5?
Sure.
Okay.
How many were there overall? How many options did we
There were
like 8 or 9?
I had 10 on there at least.
Okay. Top 5. Okay, go ahead.
Top 5. All right. A newcomer in the Penn State podcast space. It is Behind the Wall with Landon Tangwall. He's kind of just started his podcast. That came in at number 5. Again, this is completely just our own small little media empire here. So keep that in mind. Number 4, Lions 247, their podcast. I didn't know how to group all of these ones together, so I just called it State Media PSU. They came in at number 3. That's Brenneman, that is Hackenberg, and former podcast guest Brandon Bell. They're kind of, they have, plus I think there's a couple player ones kind of loosely tied into that one as well. So that one's on there. And then number 2 was us.
Get out of here. Our own survey, we finished second. That's still pretty good.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Thanks for voting. That's nice.
So, and it was like, again, we got a lot of people to answer this. So there was not like just 2 people that said us. So I appreciate that. There were 2 people that said us later on. We'll get to that in a second. And number 1 was the Blue White Illustrated podcast. Okay.
Legacy media, basically.
Legacy media.
Basically in that form.
Okay. So, our top 5 most read. This was a big one last year. I think this list is pretty similar. Might be slightly different. I think one name dropped off of it. But top 5 most read outlets for Penn State media, Penn State news. Number 5 was Penn Live. Number 4, statecollege.com. Number 3, Onward State. Number 2, The Athletic. And number 1, On3/Blue White Illustrated. So, this is where 2 people said us. So, shout out to those 2 people that said us, that read us for Penn State news. Tell you what, we've got.
God bless you. Yeah, but you're getting different Penn State news from us. So there you go.
We try to think about it differently. All right. Will Audrey Snyder defend her crown?
I know we're going to find out in a minute. If I could do a drum roll, we should have looked one of those up and how little whatever.
I can edit that in or something. Your favorite beat writer. Number 5, Johnny McGonigal from Penn Live.
Okay. Making a debut, basically, right? Or was he 5? Was he last year?
Maybe last year. I have to look. I should have gone back and looked, but I think he did all right. Number 4, longtime beat writer now, even though him and I are effectively the same age, Greg Pickle. I think Greg does a nice job with kind of the roundup stuff he does and kind of engaging with readers, particularly on the message boards. So I think that was good. All right, number 3, Audrey Snyder. So we will have a new champion.
We had some movement at the top.
Yeah. Number 2, speaking of Blue White Illustrated, was Ryan Snyder, who I think probably does one of the better jobs on the beat of covering the recruiting aspect. And then number 1, Sean Fitz. That was the number 1, which objectively, I think probably would be my answer too, or at least the beat writer that I find the absolute most value out of, because he will give you like the most inside sources stuff, published inside sources. Right. That's not to say that any of the other beat writers don't have those. It's just like it's one of the few times you actually see it written. So yeah. Again, on 3, the Blue White Illustrated team kind of kicking butt.
So they must be worth paying for.
Yeah.
See, clearly.
All right. Last question that we had that was new this year. I think this one was new, but I think we asked this at the end of the season as well. And I think we'll do this when we do the end of season survey. We'll do this again. What grade would you give the Penn State beat? So A through F. 58% of people said B. 28% of people said A, and 13% of people said C. So I think that's fair. I think Penn State fans are probably spoiled a little bit by the amount of people that cover their football team. I also think sometimes there are things that people miss on, or maybe aren't uncovered, or aren't talked about or written about enough. So I think a B. I would give a B+ if we had allowed B pluses. Maybe an A-, B+, A-, somewhere in that range. Any thoughts there?
We gave them a B.
You gave them a B?
I don't know if I'd have done a B+ if they were there to. Can't think of anything they missed on, right? It's just always the grumpy.
Yeah.
The majority, except for the pay ones, right? And because I don't get as much from the pay ones, personally, I mean, I just don't pay for them. I think in the general stuff, I know I'm getting the same routine every week because that's when they're getting fed stuff. Like nobody's really zigging when other people are zagging or give me something different in depth, which the pay stuff may give me. So that's probably why for my personal stuff, it'd probably be B instead of B plus, just because I'm not getting, oh yeah, I got to read this, so.
I think the main thing particularly over the course of doing this podcast, I think that I've paid attention to or started to realize is like, for the most part, anybody can cover the ins and outs of the season. Obviously, last year was like a little bit different when Yurcich got fired, right? I think that a lot of that is, like you said, like they're fed that. It's what you do in the off season, or it's what you can do differently. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like Poorman's when he does his numbers thing. I think that's one of the reasons, I like Johnny's stuff and Audrey's stuff when they do their feature stuff in the off season or even on the bye week. So to me, that's about maximizing that kind of time, I think would be the best way to put it. So that's why I said B plus A minus somewhere, right? Maybe a 90%. We'll give it a 90%. Okay. Some of your feedback. And I think most of which aligns with kind of what you and I talk about pretty much every week on this podcast, but also right now. Like I think what a lot of high praise for BWI. BWI is an A. The rest are average at best. That's what that one person said. BWI is excellent. No one comes close. It's the only site you need. Fits in the team. Fits and team is the best in the business, not just on the PSU beat, but any beat. Can't touch them anywhere. This person kind of agreed with us and said, I would give an A minus or B plus because I don't think anyone could really be perfect, but this beat is large and it has all the niches covered from recruiting to long form to random zany details, and some of them aren't afraid to ask James Franklin tough questions. Having said that, as someone who usually listens to pressers live or the next day to kill time at work, some of them ask the dumbest questions or have questions and phrase it stupidly, though nobody's perfect. I think that was a fair
There you go.
criticism.
That's fair. Yeah.
This one person says, offer good coverage, but don't give enough in-depth coverage. Needs to be a little more meat on the bone to get some of the ideas across to a casual fan. A good example would be the NIL situation. I agree with that person. Like, I don't know if the beat has done a good job of covering the NIL stuff, and I also don't know if Penn State has done a good enough job of letting those people into the NIL experience and maybe showcasing.
No, and I think it's different if you're with them every week. Like at some point, it's my question for the news conference. How does NIL work?
Yeah.
Like how as a student, right? And even with Erica, and I didn't pull the punch. I knew we were trying to be fair with her time. Like I'm curious. As after she said it, I'm like, okay. So as a kid, the pro league is now not a side job. It's whatever. Like, are these kids making like? I don't want numbers exactly, but are kids making 5 figures playing Penn State women's soccer?
Yeah.
Sounded like they were, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe not, so yeah. So I can see that from a beat perspective, not carrying that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It didn't seem small. This person said need to ask tougher questions on a consistent basis and push back more on the head coach of Penn State athletics. Everything from what they say to access to digging up more stories. I think that's relatively fair. I think, again, kind of the beat challenges or balances the hand that feeds and trying not to bite the hand that feeds sometimes. I think it is fair. And then this last person said, with Ben Jones retiring / going away, I think Darian should cover the Penn State men's hockey team. I will not be covering the Penn State men's hockey team.
There you go. Got to love somebody watching out for you, though. So maybe that was Ben that submitted that.
Maybe it was Ben.
Or your mom. Who knows?
Nah, I don't know. Okay. No, I think this was good. I think this was a fair analysis of Penn State beat. Any other thoughts, Mr. Samsel?
No, I think you're right. Glad we did it. Glad it's good. I'm glad I got responses, and I think people's responses were thoughtful and accurate.
Yeah.
Especially us being the second podcast.
Yeah. I'm really, really proud of that one. And the 2 people that said they read us for Penn State news.
Exactly. God bless them.
Okay. All right. Steve had some internet problems, so he's going to go deal with that. So I'm just going to wrap up the podcast. This is the Stuff Summer Says podcast with Steve. And on the website this week, we'll have those results and then probably some other football stuff, maybe. other than that, we've got a website. It's called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called With Steve. Emails. Mine's Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is Steve at stuffsummersays.com. Twitter handles are at stuffsummersays, and mine is at Steve Samsel. So, see ya. Goodbye. Thank you. Talk to you next week.